Hello, my name is Olurotimi Osha. I like to talk about American presidents and I discuss the law and US history. Today, however, I'm going to be continuing with my discussion on the assassination attempt that I survived in my home on May 16, 2023, when rogue agents of the Department of Navy and Department of Defense um, manufactured a false emergency and a threat call, made a hoax, uh, a false threat call to get. So it was a swatting, and they generated um, a large armed police presence in my home. They tasered me. I was shot in the head, so I suffered injuries. I was tear gassed and removed naked in handcuffs in my home from my home and dumped in a hospital. This was orchestrated by and engineered by rogue agents of the Department of Navy and Department of Defense. They did use Jide Wariri and people living in my building. They had fabricated false witnesses, and they had done this. They had all engineered this over a long period of time. One of the chief architects was Nathan R. Brown. He was at the time was an audit director in Naval Audit Service in a amongst the team I was working with. What I'm discussing is not classified information, but I was working in a classified area and I was working from home. Um, so they violated a number of laws, and let me just quickly state the laws that they violated. Of course, overall, a big picture, they violated 18 USC Section 242, deprivation of rights under color of law, and specifically with respect to Nathan R. Brown, Kendra Atiz. Kendra Atiz is Director of Human Resources for the Navy. Kendra Atiz, Nathan R. Brown, who was Audit Director in Naval Audit Service. He was my acting supervisor at that time. And Nephateria McBride, Felicia A. Allen, um, Marquita Scott, Ruth Pollard, uh, and of course, Jamie A. Simon, Kirsten Risberg, and all the other people who were involved. So, with what happened, there were directives to Nathan R. Brown from the Department of Defense, and they were coordinated from above. They came from above. And again, but still, there were violations of the law because the federal government, when we start working for the federal government, we take an oath. Part of our oath is to defend the United States Constitution and the laws. Part of the United States Constitution, of course, has the amendments, right? The Bill of Rights. So you don't use the law to violate the rights of an individual, a citizen's rights, and that was what they did. We also, part of the laws of the United States uh, include abiding by the rules of the Federal Civil Service. So some of the laws that they violated, specifically with regard to the Federal Civil Service, include 18 USC Section 1001. That's False Statements Act, in violation of the False Statements Act. Nathan R. Brown, I would later learn on May 4th and subsequently May 4th, 2020, three had made malicious fabrications, falsified records, in addition to others that I'd reported. I reported people prior to that for falsifying records. I'd passed them on to the Inspector General's office and they were passing them along. Somebody was blocking them. So I reported fraud, waste, and abuse, right, to Inspector General's Naval Audit Service Inspector General and the Department of the Navy Inspector General, DoD Inspector General. So they have a pattern in the Department of Defense of covering up fraud, waste, and abuse, right? But we're auditors. We're not supposed to cover this up because that's our job. We're supposed to protect the integrity of the system and protect taxpayer money and make sure that fraud is eliminated. Absolutely, it's the presence of fraud is uh, it it violates the trust that the American public, American taxpayer repose in us, right? As custodians of their resources. Um, but at the same time, it harms our war fighters if they don't have the necessary resources to help them to be able to execute their missions. And when we enable fraud or we cover up fraud in the Department of the Navy, as was going up, obviously, right? Then it's a breach of trust, and it is a violation of the United States Constitution. So they violated the 18 USC Section 1001, which is False Statement Acts. Nathan Brown would make a number of false statements, and other people had made false statements. I'll find out subsequently. They violated 18 USC, um, 18 USC Section 1917, which deals with interference with civil service exams or making false representations regarding civil service exams or exams concerning the civil service. Nathan R. Brown, in his statements, fabricated, made malicious and false statements concerning exams that I had taken. That's actually a violation of the Federal Civil Service Code of Conduct. So that's a criminal offense. In addition, they violated 5 USC Section 2302. That's regarding prohibited personnel practices and making false accusations. So Nathan R. Brown, Nephateria McBride, Kendra Atiz, Obi Rodriguez, and Ruth Pollard, Marquita Scott, Felicia A. Allen, I would find out from evidence that they had falsified uh, information and made malicious false statements against me in retaliation for my filing uh, proper complaints, petitioning, which is protected by my First Amendment rights and my rights as an employee, federal government, civil servant. Those are my rights. So they retaliated. That is also a violation of the Whistleblower Protection Act. So let me now continue with where I had left off. So in the earlier video I'd done, I talked about how the Auditor General asked me to report Marquita Scott to the HR. So I reported her to HR and the EEO. Once I'd done that, she said, "Good, now they can't fire you." So I would subsequently find out that all the while, uh, Nephateria McBride and her coterie, right, her cohort, they kept trying to fire me. But the Auditor General had made it a rule that because she didn't trust their judgment, she wouldn't let them be able to terminate anybody without her approving it. They have to get her permission first. So she gave me assurances that don't worry about it, that you can't she's not going to approve any termination, that she's not going to let them terminate me. Now, because she was able to confirm that Nephateria McBride and Nathan Brown, in their false accusations, had been violating uh, 5 USC Section 2302, right? And they had also been violating 18 USC Section 1001, right? So they were committing crimes, but she did nothing about it. She knew. I was able to provide her evidence that they were making false accusations. Meanwhile, I didn't know what was going on. They were doing this in retaliation to, because they were trying to protect Marquita Scott. I had gone to report Marquita Scott. Marquita Scott is in the U.S. military, so in the Navy. So apparently, people in the Navy, something like that can get them fired, removed from the Navy, right? Misconduct, harassment, and things like that. They're supposed to have a zero tolerance for it. So my going to report her, which the Auditor General asked me to do. She asked me to go and report it, right? Initially, I wasn't going to report it, but the Auditor General was letting me know that if I don't report, these people are actually they're throwing you under the bus. They're setting you up. They're going to get you fired. They're going to destroy your career, So I went, reported it. My request was, okay, you know what, just transfer me to another directorate. That was what I wanted. And the Auditor General had told me that's my right. So I wanted to go to another directorate. But the audit director, the assistant audit director general, the assistant auditor general at the time, Nephateria McBride, she was like an assistant to, I mean, she was the head of the directorate I was in. She made entities claiming she wanted me, she saw me as an asset, she doesn't want drama in her place. Made all these representations. I was like, no, I want to leave. She said, okay, you know what, will you go and work with this other guy, this older white guy that was a former Marine vet. And I found him. I thought he was responsible, was older than he was getting ready to retire, and I thought he'd be a good resource. So I told the Auditor General, okay, that I agreed to go and work with this guy. So I said yes. Now it turns out that even though this was the decision on November 4th, um, and they said I wouldn't have to work with this other female who was harassing me, right? I wouldn't have to work with her anymore. She was in the military. She was harassing me. She had been harassing me. Her name's Makita Scott. She was harassing me, and I reported it. Um, for some reason, they now said, okay, that's Ruth Pollard, who was my manager. She now came after the meeting because she was disappointed. She expressed her disdain, her dissatisfaction that I had gone to report to HR, because she was like, hey, I told you not to go to HR. It's your right to go. But she was she sounded very offended. She reprimanded me in the meeting on November 4th. So a couple of things happened. Nathan Brown now invited me to a meeting, to another meeting at Starbucks, right? Maybe like the following week, that I should meet him at Starbucks. I said, fine. Then, since I had reported to EEO responded to me. EEO is like the HR, they're the actual HR of Equal Employment Opportunity, right? They're the actual HR of the federal government, right? So they got back with me and they started an investigation. They started a process. And one of the things that I now did, I didn't only report just the harassment from this Makita Scott, not just that harassment, but I also reported the the discriminatory offer that I got, right? Because I found out that because so in the hiring process in the federal government, it's supposed to be done without deception, right? It's prohibited. Deception is prohibited in the hiring process of the federal government because it's a contract, right? And so you have to have a meeting of the minds, right? They can't be deceptive, and then they're not supposed to discriminate you. They're supposed to put you in a position that matches your qualifications, right? Otherwise, it could be discriminatory. Since I had discovered that management actually told when Nephateria McBride told me in a meeting on November 1, when she had an inappropriate meeting with me at Starbucks on November 1, and she revealed to me that she had actually asked that I should have a higher step, and this was what she understood that I was getting, but that wasn't what happened, right? Uh, and I discovered that there was another guy called John, right? He left. He was actually offering me the GS11, and he insisted that I'm GS11. He was the original guy who was hiring me. But the Kendra Atiz was using all sorts of deception. I don't know what Kendra Atiz's motivation was. Maybe it was Nephateria McBride that was twisting her arm. I don't know what that motivation was. But I've discovered, though, from my meeting with Nephateria McBride, that Kendra Atiz had lied regarding the offer, right? So she reduced the offer, even though management, both sides, had actually they'd offered me something higher. And Kendra Atiz had been making the false representation that it was management that didn't want to make me that higher offer. So her offer was coming. I don't know what her motivation was to offer me that GS9 step 1. Then something else that I found out that she had done, because you're in the system, she had falsified my credentials, because the federal government wants to be fair, right? It's not like private sector that they could do whatever they want. The federal government wants to hire you based on your qualifications, so you don't feel discriminated against, right? So of course I have an MBA. I also have a Doctor of Laws degree. I was hired as an auditor, right? I was hired as an auditor, but all my credentials, my highest level should be there. They intentionally, HR intentionally excluded my Doctor of Law degree, and they made my highest level of qualification a Master of Business Administration degree. So HR falsified my credentials in the system to be able to validate, justify giving me the GS9. With a master's, you have a GS9. But with a Juris Doctor, a doctorate level law degree, 3 years, like I do, under the federal government, the JD is a Doctor of Law. It's considered a professional doctorate. They hire you, it's supposed to be at a GS11. And in my case, I have a JD MBA, right? Substantial years. So she intentionally misrepresented and downgraded my credentials to be able to put me at a GS9, right? At a lower level than I was qualified for. So I reported this to EEOC. So they started an investigation, and that was ongoing. I would later find out, however, so like substantial fraud was going on because later on, as we're proceeding in the process, the Auditor General made a representation saying, well, they represented to her that I'm put in the system as like I'm GS11. So if that's the case, that means somebody was probably collecting money for a GS11, skimming off the top, and I was being paid for as a GS9. So it's something the FBI should investigate. The NCIS, I don't trust them because I think NCIS was involved in the swatting, because later on I would see that Kendra Atiz and HR had threatened to send Naval Criminal Investigative Service to my home, made false representations, things I didn't know. They had worked. They threatened to report me to law enforcement. That's in retaliation. I hadn't done anything. This was many months later on in May. I'm gonna continue. I want to continue with the sequence appropriately, but so in any event, I was going through the EEOC process, and the guy who was representing his name was Toby Wolf. I see that he joined Naval Criminal Investigative Service. I don't know. They may have been working together and all that. So they may have been working together to commit the swatting. I don't know. But Toby Wolf, he worked from the appearance. What it appeared, he was trying to mediate the process, right? That okay, let's work through this. Let's mediate the process. He said, look, yes, you're right. You should have the GS11. I don't know why they should stop you. So they got the mediators to talk. Now, in one of the mediation processes, the person I had actually filed the complaint, because I filed a complaint against, that's Kendra Atiz. She now brought herself to be subject matter expert to influence the thing. And I said, no, I told the mediator, I said, no, this isn't appropriate. My complaint is against this person, right? Why is she being the subject matter expert to intercede, to say this is how policy is? She's the party one of the people that I actually filed the complaint against, right? So it's inappropriate, right? The mediator is often a lawyer, right? They're lawyers and they try and say, okay, let's settle this. Don't let it go to court, because once it passes through the EEOC case, if they don't make the right decision, it can go to court. You can sue the government. So this person came, that's Kendra Atiz, one of the people that I filed the complaint against, that, okay, she discriminated against me by downgrading my credentials. She wants to be on the mediation panel as a subject matter expert, but she's the party I'm complaining against. So that's like unfairness in the system, right? In violation of that principle that I talked about, right? Nemo Judex in causa sua. That means a party should not be judging their own cause. So it's just this unfairness that they do in the federal government and the American judicial system that I've noticed in the Montgomery County malicious prosecution and in the Department of Defense, Department of the Navy, that just mimics what goes on, what is supposed to go on in third world countries or authoritarian states like Russia, where they have apparatchiks who just do whatever it is, they're above the law. This was what my experience in the Navy, and they're violating uh, the constitutional rights of America, and they're violating the values that are embedded in our constitution. So, in any event, before it got to that, um, I was offered to go and start working with this guy, right? And I agreed. I agreed that I would go and work with this person instead of moving out to another directorate. By the way, the Auditor General and other people, I had all these offers on the table in the government. I had numerous offers, excellent offers, but I didn't want to switch because I wanted to complete my time. Again, I didn't want to just keep jumping around, right? And then the other thing, I think again, I liked the work I was given because interestingly, I'm not supposed to discuss my work. I don't. But interestingly, even though my title was auditor, I was combining the financial side and I was given legal work to do. I was actually doing legal work, right? So I didn't have a license to practice law. I hadn't taken the bar, but I was given legal work. So I was actually getting experience, legal experience within the federal government, which was fantastic in a classified area. So it was excellent. And what else? Um, yeah, I took this certification. I took appropriations law. I was taking acquisitions, um, uh, fiscal law, all these certifications, right? So I was getting deep I was getting training in the law and hands-on experience in the law as well, legal experience. So, and while combining that with finance, so I was like, I was wearing many hats in that one role. So for me, that was enjoyable, and I wanted to do it up to a certain point, right? So my job, however, was uh, to go and take courses, right? Just go and take exams. If anybody knows me and if anybody sees my resume, they know that I'm used to taking exams. I can wake up and take exams and I'll ace them, right? So I'm used to taking exams, right? I have at least 4 university degrees. I don't have to repeat that, but so that was my job. I was told that that I'm going to go through a new going through another clearance process, right? So until that clearance was done, they asked me to just be taking courses. So the government was actually paying me to go to school. I wake up, I was just taking courses. So you can imagine they knew they were planning to terminate me, but they were using taxpayer money. They were wasting taxpayer money investing in me and paying. So when the Auditor General was telling me that, hey, try and move somewhere else, they're trying to fire you, I conveyed that to Mr. Toby Wolf that, hey, um, I didn't let him know that, okay, it was the Auditor General who told me, but I expressed that, hey, from the way they're acting, it looks like these guys are trying to terminate me, right? And the man said, because he found out that all I was doing was taking courses, he said, no way. He said, the Navy doesn't send you on all these courses, train you to that. Don't you know that they're going to get their money out of you? This was what he was telling me. You're not going anywhere. They're not terminating you, nothing. That they don't spend money on you to terminate you. First of all, that's a violation of federal policy, right? It violates fraud, waste, and mismanagement. You're trying to terminate somebody and then you send him on 10 month courses. You're paying him apart from his salary. Then you're paying those courses. You're paying outside vendors to train him. There was a course that I was sent for. I was the only person. Somebody from external came to teach me, just me. I was the only student, and that person was a very high level person. Anyway, let me stop this video here. I'm going to continue it. And so I'm basically giving the trail, the timeline of what happened to show how um, rogue agents of the Department of the Navy and Department of Defense entered a conspiracy to commit murder. I was almost murdered on May 16, 2023, based on the malicious actions and conspiracy to harm me by Nathan R. Brown. Nathan R. Brown and Felicia A. Allen, they made a false threat accusation, and they had engineered, orchestrated events that led to my malicious swatting. It was Nathan R. Brown, Kendra Atiz, Felicia A. Allen, Ruth Pollard. I'd been threatened by Ruth Pollard, and they engineered the swatting. And so I'm going to continue with my discussion, providing evidence on how Nathan R. Brown of the Department of the Navy attempted to commit murder on May 16, 2023. Thank you. I'll keep you posted.